One, one.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to today's webinar, a walk through the TUC application. What we're going to do today is briefly speak to our admissions criteria, walk through the individual parts of the application, and then leave plenty of time at the end for questions. Before we dive in, though, and not to leave you wondering who we are, my name is Valeria Vins. I'm Associate Director of Evaluation at the Admissions Office. I've been with the admissions team since the fall of 2018, but prior to that, I spent 4 years at TUC's Career Services Office, primarily running on-campus recruiting.
And my name is Amy Mitzen. I'm the Director of Admissions, Marketing and Recruitment. I'm delighted to be here with Valeria this afternoon in Hanover and with all of you. I have been at TUC for many, many years. I started my career here in our MBA program office, which is our one-stop shop for all student services, and then headed into admissions to continue my journey here at the TUC School. I am our representative to the consortium as well as to MLT and the ROMBA organization, and we are looking forward to walking you through the application today.
Yay. So our goal is to make the application process clear and transparent, and hopefully today is either a continuation of that for you or a start of a new relationship with us. So one thing we would like to highlight is that we consider the applications in their entirety. We read through the entire application, so there's no one part of the application that is more important than the other. Really, everything counts, and the questions are there for a reason. Is because we would like to learn more about you and specifically see how you can speak to our 4 admissions criteria, which are the SMART, accomplished, aware, and nice. So for the next couple of minutes, Amy and I will walk you through the admissions criteria briefly, and then we'll dive into the actual small pieces of the application. So the first criteria that comes up here, SMART, it's your intellectual aptitude. It's, of course, it's your GPA, it's your test scores. They are reflective of your academic aptitude, your previous performance, your communication skills, your ability with numbers, and so much more than that. But SMART is not just about your GPA. It's not just about your GMAT or GRE or other degrees. It's also looking and showing us your curiosity. Are you excited about the challenges? Do you like and appreciate learning from others? Have you done so before, either personally or professionally? And it's also about you sharing your knowledge with others. So that's sort of to the core of what we look for when we say the SMART criteria, and it will surface throughout your application, not just in the actual numbers in GPA, but also in your interviews, your letters of recommendation, and many of the other pieces.
Your accomplishments signal that you have the ability to positively impact the TUC community as a student leader and then the future community as an alum. Your accomplishments are reflected throughout your application. We see them in your resume, in your essays. You talk about them in your interview, so they're echoed throughout the application. The stories in your essay and your interview definitely complement what we see on that one page of your resume. We hope that you are excellent at your job and you're able to showcase that in different ways in the application and also be able to have impact outside of your job. So accomplishment is not narrowly defined. You can broadly reflect those accomplishments throughout your application, and we see it in many different ways.
Good, thank you. So now to speak to aware. Demonstrating awareness as we see it entails 3 things. It's you knowing who you are, knowing where you're going, and knowing how TUC will help you to get there. So to break this down a bit, as you think about your previous experiences, so you understand your experiences, you know your values, that goes to the core of who you are. So that's the knowing who you are piece. And now you take that knowledge of your previous experiences and you combine it with your current motivations, and that leads you to the where you're going, right? So your future career path as it starts to line up in front of you. So that's the second piece. And the third piece there is having an idea of this future career path and how a distinctive Tuck MBA will help you get there. So when you take those, knowing who you are, where you're going, and how Tuck will help you, that's primarily what makes up awareness for us. And we believe that you can best contribute when you know yourself well, when you know how your individuality adds to the fabric of Tuck. So it's very much interconnected. It's the Tuck, how Tuck will help you get to where you'd like to be, but also what is it that you bring to Tuck. And this criteria will emerge a lot in the essays. We'll see it in your letters of recommendation, strongly in your interview, but it's really same as the other two criteria that we just spoke about. It really emerges almost everywhere in the application.
And NICE, so when we think about the NICE criteria, think about you're able to offer and ask for help freely. You are able to invest in the success of someone else. We see the NICE criteria throughout the application again, but thinking about ways that you'll highlight it, particularly in Essay 3 in the application, you have a chance to specifically respond to the NICE criteria. But NICE is also showing empathy for the diverse experiences of others and being able to share your experiences as well. So it's a bit of that give and take in the community here at Tuck. Investing in the success of someone else is absolutely a hallmark of this criteria and something you'll have the chance to highlight throughout the application process.
So now that we spoke to the admissions criteria, just to give you a better idea of what we look for when we speak of the SMART, accomplished, aware, and nice, we'll dive deeper into the individual parts of the application. As we do that, though, really the first thing you need to keep in mind are the key dates and deadlines, especially the application deadlines. This year, the round 1 application deadline is October 7th, which is 2 weeks later than last year's application deadline. And the admissions committee pushed this application deadline back to give you applicants more time to hopefully come up and visit Tuck, learn more about the school, see what everything is about. And we believe this will help you put forth a stronger application. We're still committed to giving your decisions as soon as we possibly can, so those deadlines have not changed much since last year. But so October 7th is the first round 1 deadline. As you can see, October, January, and March are the consortium deadlines, and then round 2 and round 3. So now that you're actually starting to get to your application and looking at the individual parts of it, we'll speak about what makes the Tuck application distinctively.
All right. So I'll start with the application form itself. Not an application form like when I had to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles this morning and renew my license. It was very, very quick and did not take much thought. It's all information that I had at the ready, but I didn't have to think about it. I filled out the form in line. So this is an application form, but it is not a form you want to fill out in line. So take your time, go through but you'll want to take your time to go through it and proofread and edit it. It is not a throwaway piece of the application. It's a bit of a foundation. We're going through all the details here, and if there were misspellings or inaccuracies in dates that we then saw in a different place that were not consistent, that wouldn't look great for you in terms of just how much effort you put into the process. I think it's a signal to see a very thoughtful application form there. Within the application form itself, you'll also have the chance to briefly share your goals with us. So taking your time with that is great. Again, with the application form, it's not a throwaway piece of the application. You'll know this information quickly, but don't rush through that part. So I won't rush, but I will keep moving through. So thinking about academics and test scores next. So as a requirement in the application, you would submit a GMAT or a GRE score. The committee does not have a preference for one over the other. We We have accepted the GMAT for many, many, many years and the GRE for many, many other years. And again, it is up to you, and whatever test you're performing most strongly on is the one that you want to submit. We want you to do really well on this part of the application. So investing time in taking one of those tests is important. We have applicants who will take the test, whichever test they choose, more than once, and you're okay to submit more than one score. We don't see that as a failing in any way. We see that as your path to achieving the best score that you want to submit and the strongest application on that measure. In addition to the GMAT or GRE, if you are not a native English speaker, you'll be required to submit a TOEFL score or IELTS, so a test that evaluates your English skills, and so that is a requirement as well. Thinking about those requirements, we'll probably have some more questions about that later on in the program here, but I'll move on from that and go into academics. So thinking about your past academic history, you're required to submit the transcript from your undergraduate institution. With that, you may have attended a school that has a 4.0 GPA scale, and that's how it's reported. You would report your GPA to us in the same way in the application. If your school does not report on a 4.0 scale, you do not have to translate that GPA in any way. We will see the content of your transcripts and everything that you submit to us there. That gives us a lot of detail about your past academic history. Thinking about the GPA, that's something that applicants say some wish they could go back and change, but you can't do that. So that is what it is and is presented to us. And we don't look at these things in isolation. We're looking at your entire application, so don't let the GPA stop you. We will also see the content of the courses that you've taken. Maybe it was a very demanding undergraduate major and course of study. We take that into consideration as well when evaluating your academics. So we will see not only the pure grades, but we'll also see the content of the listing of the courses that you took in the transcript and be able to put that all together as we review your application. And we have seen on our committee, we have many, many, many years of experience on our committee and have seen transcripts from all over the U.S., all over the world. So I feel very confident that no matter what school you graduated from, we will be able to properly take in all of that information to evaluate your application. Just pausing there, thinking about test score. We covered that. So we'll move on from academics and test scores, but of course happy to cover any of that as we continue on with questions. But moving on and thinking about your resume and your work history. So a requirement of the application is the resume. We would encourage you to have a one-page resume. That is wonderful for us to see in the application process. That is also a resume that you would share, that your interviewer would see. That one-page resume is also a valuable exercise for future recruiting because MBA recruiters will most often want a one-page resume. So that may not be the format that you have now, but we would love to see that in your application. Thinking about the resume, it is that snapshot of the experiences that you've had thus far. Sometimes you can't fit it all in there. You want to put everything in there, and so there's kind of no white space left on that resume. That can often be hard to digest. So thinking about how you want to streamline the experiences there on the resume, and know that throughout the application, future interview, and conversation about your candidacy, you'll be able to flesh out all of the details on that resume, but keeping in mind anything on the resume is fair game for us to ask about, for a future interviewer to ask about. So being thoughtful about what you have in there is great. Your work history. So as part of your application, you want to aim to help the admissions committee understand the nature of your work, the level of the challenge that you've had, your progression, what have you accomplished. So you do not have to have president, vice president, CEO in your job history for us to see that you have had success. So thinking about highlighting the impact, it's not always reflected in the job title. We do not value one job title, industry. We don't value one industry over another when we're evaluating candidates for admission to Tuck. The diversity of students' backgrounds in the classroom is incredibly valuable. So the unique experience that you're bringing it could be just that, unique. It's not viewed as lesser than anyone else. If you're not coming from a business background, great. If you are coming from a business background, great. All of these things add value in the MBA classroom, and it's for you to share with us what your accomplishment and impact has been. And that does not need to be kind of when you're sharing your work experience, it doesn't just need to be the stellar moments. There could be some mistakes there that you've learned from, then some experiences you want to highlight throughout your application that show you've had a real work history that might not be perfect. That is also okay. It's showing the growth from there. What did you learn from those mistakes, if there were any in your professional history thus far? So just pausing for a second here. With the work experience, the quality is more important. Just as I'd say, thinking about quality and quantity, it's always a question. Quality, very important in the quality of your work experience. So you may have been able to have a quality work experience and gain a great skill set and be ready for the MBA within a year or two, where someone else, their trajectory could have been very different. They've also seen accomplishments and had great work experience, but it's taken 1 or 2 jobs, 5 or 6 or 7 years of experience. You may be in an industry where it's taken many more years than a peer to have the opportunity to pursue your MBA. All of these experiences are great and very complementary when we bring our MBA class together. So whether you've had a year or two's worth of work experience or are on the higher end, 8, 9 years work experience, this is all valuable. So thinking about the quality of the work experience, or if you have quantity of work experience, what that has done for you and what you'll be able to contribute at Tuck. The average number of years work experience for the entering class is about 5 years, but you don't have to shoot for that average. You may fall outside of it, and that is absolutely welcome. So do not be preoccupied by, do I have too few years? Do I have too many years? It's, are you ready at this point in time, and do you have something to contribute here? Thinking about your leadership, just remembering that leadership can come from all sides of an organization. As I said at the beginning, you do not have to have a CEO title to be seen as someone who could be a valuable contributor in the MBA. So you can have all sorts of leadership, and that can come from inside your professional environment, or it could be outside of work. So thinking about the impact that you've had and the professional experience plus experiences outside of work are all experiences that you'll be able to bring into the application. That kind of flows a little bit into involvement and achievement. So you may have had some significant involvements outside of work. You definitely have room to share those with us in the application. Applicants are often leading specific working groups within their organization or have significant involvements outside of their professional work. You will have the opportunity to showcase that in your application. We give you the platform to share professional as well as personal experiences throughout, and you can bring in some of the impact that you've had there, whether you're highlighting it professionally or with an organization outside your full-time job. So let me pause there for everyone's benefit and turn it back to Valeria to continue our discussion.
It's great, and it's a good segue into the next part, which is the essays, and building on what Amy said between the academics, test scores, resume, and work history. If there's anything there that you would like to highlight or to speak to more detail to the admissions committee, speaking of essays, I would encourage you to use the optional essay for that. So if you have career switches that are just different and you would like to explain in further detail, or if you'd like to speak more to your undergraduate GPA, anything that you would like to flag to the admissions office or explain in further detail, because you don't want us reading your application and having questions, use the optional essay for that, right? Is that a fair statement? Okay, so that's the optional essay. Do not use it as a continuation of essays 1, 2, or 3, or try to shoehorn in another answer that you would like to give it to us if we're not asking for it. It's really just to highlight something that you would like to clarify further on in your application. And so now stepping back to the 3 main essay questions that we ask you, it's we'll ask you to tell us why you're pursuing an MBA and why Tuck. The second essay question asks you who you are. It's as simple as that. Tell us who you are. And the third question asks you to tell us or to share an example of how you helped someone else succeed, even when it was not convenient or easy. Now, at this point, I'm not going to dive deep into each individual essay question, primarily because our executive director, Luke Pena, has posted several excellent blogs on our admissions criteria and on the essays on the Talk MBA 360 admissions blog. So if you have not had a chance to check it out already, go and take a look there. There's a wealth of knowledge there, and I know that Luke will be posting another blog soon specifically about the 3 essay questions. So I'd much rather let Luke speak to it there versus repeating the information here. So what I'll do just for the next minute or two is speak more to the essays and some things to pay attention to as you write them and sort of taking away the actual essay questions. So I think the first thing to keep in mind, it sounds very simple, but it's really focus on actually answering the question that is asked. So from the 3 questions that we ask, it is a firm 300-word limit, so think about what you want to tell us to that specific question, right? Don't try to shoehorn in anything, or sometimes you have a story that you're excited about and you start writing it and we see candidates submit it and yet it does not fully answer the question. It is an excellent story, but it might not tell us or speak more to the aware or nice criteria. So really focus on answering the question that is asked. And be yourself. Use your authentic voice. So be descriptive, straightforward, be sincere. We really want to hear from you on who you are. We're trying to see the applicants behind the application. So you being yourself and using your voice and telling us about it yourself really helps us with that. So really think about what makes you you. It's back to my comments on aware and put that in paper, right? So be clear and concise. As I mentioned just now, it is a firm 300-word limit. So for you to be clear and concise, you really need to spend some time ahead of time just thinking about what it is that you would like to say, and don't waste sort of precious real estate on things that are either not answering the question or spending too much time on setting up the situation. Really be crisp, be clean, use your voice, and tell us what it is. Do some self-analysis, self-exploration in advance. That will really help you, I think, not just with our essays, but really help you as a candidate get to know yourself better and will prepare you better for the interviews and so many other things in life. So really think about that. And as I mentioned, the optional essay is indeed optional, so don't use it unless you have. And finally, on the essays, again, as simple as it may sound, proofread. Read it once, read it twice. If you have a friend or a colleague that knows you well, have maybe them read an essay for you. It's perfectly fine for you to give your essay to somebody else to read. Don't ask anyone else to write the essay for you, but once you have written it, run it by them. Sometimes it's great to give an essay to somebody, but not give them the question, right? So see if after reading it, they understand what it is that we're trying to get at. And finally, proofreading will bring up maybe some of the typos and grammatical errors. They don't disqualify your application by any means, but they can indicate a lack of attention to detail, right? And you don't want that. So really read through the essays, read through everything that you submit, make sure that you're consistent with the dates, but specifically in the essays, because the word count is limited to 300. It's big questions that we're asking you. We want you to be specific. So really, after all the effort that you put in, just make sure that the final product is error-free or as much as you can. Mm-hmm. Anything else to add to the
I
essays?
support that, and all that great advice. And we know it's challenging to, answer one question and only have the 300 words, but the thought, taking time with the essay questions and think about how they align with the criteria, what Tuck is, what this community is like, why you want to be here. All of those things factor into the reflection, and then we'll kind of pour into the essays. And I know you have a lot of stories to share. You have so much. The candidates are so enthusiastic about sharing their candidacy with us, and we love that. And you do have a lot to share, but maybe thinking about the application, the essays, the interview, it's an entire landscape. So you wouldn't just put it all in one essay. So just thinking about the entire application as a landscape that you're filling in with detail and color and information that you're going to share with us. So don't think you have to get everything into one bullet point or one essay. It's shared throughout. And the interview is a piece of that as well that can complement the written word. Your recommenders are also going to echo some of the things that you've said and maybe share additional stories. So it's all going to come together nicely, and that reflection, that attention to detail brings it together very, very strongly when we finally receive the finished product.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we jump into letters of reference?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for letters of recommendation, listening to the feedback that we received this year, we now adopted the questions asked by the common letter of recommendation. So your recommenders will be asked to tell us about, sort of provide a brief description of their interactions with you. Tell us about how your performance compares to that of other well-qualified individuals. And they will also be asked to share one most important piece of feedback that they have given you over the years. So as you can see already, for these questions to be answered well, you need to choose someone who has worked with you extensively and is very familiar with your work experience and is able to actually take the time and to sit down and reflect and think of the specific examples and is willing to put in the time to write you a letter of recommendation that speaks to you as an applicant. So supervisor really is best. Direct supervisor is preferably your current direct supervisor is really encouraged. But we understand that not everyone is able to ask their direct supervisor for a variety of reasons for a letter of recommendation. So if that is not possible, consider asking your previous supervisor, maybe a team leader, a senior colleague. Again, just think about who is able to speak to your work product. And impressive title is really, it won't help. If you work closely with a CEO of your company on a project or over the years, excellent. If they're able to, have them write a letter of recommendation for you. But if they offer it to you, but you feel that your current direct supervisor or maybe a senior team colleague has had a much deeper experience with the work that they have done with you, maybe they would be a better person to do that. Again, we're trying to see specific examples. So for you as a candidate, yes, it's absolutely okay, even encouraged, to speak to your recommenders ahead of time. So sit down with them, explain to them why you're applying for an MBA, why it excites you, why you are applying to Tuck specifically too, just to give them a better idea of what is that you're trying to pursue. Speak of your future professional goals. Encourage them to use specific examples, as I mentioned. So staying away from sort of generic statements and really giving us specific examples about how they have worked with you in the past, how you have reacted to feedback. That's really encouraged. So don't feel like you just ask them for a recommendation and then it's entirely up to them to write it. Really, it's perfectly fine for you to speak to them ahead of time, not even fine, encouraged. Mm-hmm. You may not, however, draft, write, translate, or submit your own reference, even if asked so. So again, be mindful of that as you're choosing your recommenders. You will be asked to submit 2 letters of recommendation unless you are a reapplicant. So now since you're here today with us or maybe watching it later online, you're obviously already thinking about submitting a TUC application or submitting an application for an MBA. So now really, if you haven't done so already, start thinking about who those recommenders might be and start building, deepening, furthering those relationships now, again, just so that when the time comes, they're able to speak to you as the candidate, right? So give them plenty of time before the application deadline, give them plenty of notice, just to make sure that they're actually able to both speak to your work product and also submit it to us on time. Yeah.
You got it.
Excellent. Yeah. I got it. So the last piece that we'll cover today is the interviews, and that's really that's a part of the application that will speak to smart, accomplished, aware, nice, and so much more to you as a candidate. They're a key way for you to demonstrate this criteria, and there are two ways for you as an applicant candidate. There are two paths for you for an interview. It's an applicant-initiated interview and a committee-initiated interview. So TUC is actually one of the few MBA programs that invites you to schedule your own interview, and that's because we would really like to hear from you. We'd love for you to come up here to Hanover, visit our beautiful campus, get a better sense for the school, maybe speak to a current student, to visit a Q&A with an admissions officer, an interview, right? So that's the applicant-initiated interview. You can go online, look at the dates and times that are available, hopefully choose one that works for you. If not, do not worry. Very often, due to cancellations or changes in interviewer availability, interview spots come up. Just make sure, again, to look at the key dates on the website because your interview will need to be completed before the round-specific deadline. So take a look there. Perfectly fine to interview before you submit your application. In many ways, I know that candidates like that a lot just because you get, as I mentioned, a better sense for the school and your focus in the essays or in the application might shift a little bit after you visit to TUC. If you submit your application first and then interview, that's great too. Really, as I mentioned before, we'd love for as many of you to come up here and visit us. It's really, we always appreciate it, and hopefully you yourself will find the visit helpful too, and just to see if TUC is a good fit for you. If you, however, are unable to come up here for interview, do not worry. That's perfectly fine, and we understand that not everyone can take the time and come to Hanover for an interview. So we will certainly not hold it against you. It will not reflect poorly on your application. If you submit your application and the committee reads it and would like to learn more from you, we may invite you for a committee-initiated interview. And that can be done virtually or in person here in Hanover. But again, do not worry if you are unable to come here. There's still a good chance that you might be invited for an interview, and it will not reflect poorly on your application. That's mostly it to the interviews. I'm sure we'll have questions about it, so I'm not going into too much detail here. But that should be it. Again, so we're here to help with questions beyond of what we'll be answering today. We're excited to see your applications. We're excited to get to know you applicants, both through your applications and if you come up here to visit in Hanover. And that's it from me. Amy, anything else you'd like to add before we go?
So many things I could add, but I think we should probably get to so many things that I could add in support of everything that has already been said, but I think we can also get to quite a bit of what you're thinking about through the questions that you've submitted. So we could probably dive right into those.
Exciting.
Yes.
Yay.
So what is admissions looking for above all else in a TUC applicant? What makes an applicant a strong fit? Fit is such a challenging thing to define because everyone is, you are unique when you come into this process, and we don't want you to change that uniqueness to think you have to fit into any space. You bring your whole self to TUC, and that is what we want the most. And so honesty is the best policy in this process for sure, and articulating who you are, what you want to do, and specifically how those things match with what Tuck has to offer in this MBA program. So that showcases the fit. There isn't just one thing that makes a person a good fit for Tuck. It's a combination of things. Again, knowing who you are, knowing what you will have to contribute when you're here, and also understanding the value of Tuck and what we can help you accomplish while you're here for 2 years in your MBA, and then how we can support you as an alum beyond your 2 years on campus. So really taking a moment to engage with the criteria that we have laid out of smart, accomplished, aware, and nice can help you. If you're just starting to get to know Tuck, that's a great place to start. Also, getting to know the community through the alumni in particular. Maybe you have people in your network who are from Tuck. Like these are, now I'm spiraling into different ways, but there are different ways that you can begin to understand the Tuck community. And by understanding that and knowing yourself well, pairing those things together will help illuminate the fit as you communicate your candidacy throughout the application process.
And to add to that, too, we love seeing candidates excited about Tuck. We certainly are. But as you put together your applications, or speaking of fit, and you start thinking about the classes, the clubs, and everything else that excite you about it, still be mindful that there's also the academics, there's also the recruiting, and there's so much more layered on top of it. So try to be realistic. It's great to think big, and it's great to show us how much you appreciate Tuck or how much of a fit you think there is. But also think about, okay, what is actually accomplishable? Am I able to join 10 clubs my first year? Maybe not, unless I want something else to suffer. So really be smart about that too.
And that is a great point. As you think about illuminating your fit, a laundry list provides me no detail or understanding of how you would be a fit for Tuck. So diving a little bit deeper, sharing one specific story, talking about one specific connection and going a little bit deeper can really be impactful when you're sharing your knowledge of Tuck and why you want to be here.
Yeah.
So what are the common traits in applicants that stand out in a positive way, aside from a high GMAT and GPA?
Show us that you're smart, accomplished, aware, and nice. That's a great question. Most common traits. I think it comes back a little bit to what Amy was saying about fit right now. You don't need to be exactly what you envision a perfect MBA or Tuck candidate to be, but if you're honest, if you speak of how Tuck connects with you and what you've learned from either visiting the school or reading our essay questions gives you a good idea of what it is that we're actually looking for. And by answering those questions, you will speak to that.
Mm-hmm. And I think it comes into awareness as well, awareness of, what this program has to offer you, how we can help you grow, awareness of what it is that you need from the MBA program, specifically at Tuck. Through that kind of conversation in your interview, what you express in your application, I think that helps to illuminate the fit.
Yeah, and there's
a tough question.
Yeah, there's no one specific trait where we read application and say bingo. It's really, we do look at everything, so it's a combination of things. I'm trying not to say holistic.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Let's see. I think this is for you. This is a great question.
So as we're looking through the questions, there's so many we could answer. I think I might take the first one and the second one. The first. So a question here: how does one effectively portray a strong commitment to Tuck? And I'll just say briefly, everyone does it in a candidates do it in a unique way. You do not have to be in love with Tuck to show that strong connection, but knowing something about the program is definitely impactful as you go through the application. So we covered that in a couple of different ways. I just wanted to hit on it briefly, but I'll go to the next question, which asks about explaining Tuck's partnership with the consortium and how one can learn more. So the consortium, it's a consortium for graduate studies in management, and so the consortium is an organization of 20 member schools across the top 30 MBA programs, and schools have a partnership with the consortium, and it is an organization that focuses on increasing the number of underrepresented minority students in MBA programs and therefore in business. And so the consortium is an organization that this is their mission. You do not have to be an underrepresented minority student to apply through the consortium, but you would want to show dedication to that mission if you are planning to apply through consortium. You have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident to apply to MBA programs through the consortium. Again, it's 20 member schools. The application process is different in that there are layers to the process, but the information that we are receiving from a consortium applicant mirrors the information that we receive from someone who's not applying through consortium. So the application essay questions are similar. The interview process is similar. We're gathering information and requirements in the same information and requirements, but gathered in a slightly different way. If applying through the consortium, you have a common consortium application, but then a school-specific supplement. So the consortium application is live August 15th, and the first deadline is October 15th, and the second deadline is January 5th, so 2 rounds with the consortium. The consortium website is cgsm.org. You can see a lot of information there about the application process itself. I am happy to be your direct point of connection for consortium and happy to chat by email, chat by phone, whatever it is that I can do to help advance your understanding of the organization, of how we partner with the consortium organization. And I guess I could go on and on and on about that. I've worked with the organization, with the consortium for many years, and happy to share all that I know and talk about any piece of that process. In addition to TUC events that you can attend, there are also consortium events. They're called MAPS events. They're MBA application prep seminars, and you will see the MAPS events listed at cgsm.org. You'll also see them on partner school websites, and so that's a bit of consortium, not the whole thing, because there's more, and I'm happy to talk to anyone specifically about the consortium.
Thanks.
So I'll stop there.
Here's a great question. Is there any advantage to applying early, so much before the deadline? Would any applications be considered on a rolling basis? So we start reading applications after the application deadline passes. So if you feel like you have a strongest application possible ready much before the deadline, please feel free to go ahead and submit it. We will not start reading them until the actual application deadline for that specific round has passed. So we are considering application on a rolling basis after the application deadline. So we start reading them, and some applications will be read on the first day after the application deadlines, to some of them will get later in the cycle, and that might that also influences the timing of the committee-initiated interviews a little bit. So if you are invited to a committee-initiated interview on the day after the application deadline, or a week or 2 or 3, it's not an indicator of the committee's interest in your candidacy. It only indicates of how early or how late we got to your application, because we're reading through them in no specific order. They're just randomly assigned. So no, there's if you apply way before the application deadline, we will still look at your application once the deadline has passed.
Mm-hmm. So does already having a graduate degree put a candidate at a disadvantage? I say no to that, but having an additional degree is like I would typically view that as a credential for any applicant, but helping us understand why then you would also need an MBA. So how does the MBA fit into that? So kind of sharing detail about why the MBA is critical to you, though you have another graduate degree. I think that's something that's reasonably answered by many, many applicants who do have additional degrees. But then there are many applicants who, they had their undergraduate degree and then have a one-year master after that. And it's almost easy to see how that fits in when we look at the experience on their resume and some of the things that they've done, and you see that that's been a career builder for them up until this point, and the MBA fits. So sometimes it is quite evident, and other times candidates want to explain a little bit more about that. So that would be up to you. It probably doesn't even need as many words as I just gave it. So think about that before you over-explain it. It's something that we see and are happy to see that.
Yep. So. Okay, next one. How do you evaluate a 10-point GPA? Do you follow a conversion system to convert the 10-point GPA to a 4-point GPA? No, we do not convert 10 GPAs on a 10-point scale to a 4-point scale. They are still evaluated the same. So we will still look at your transcript closely. We'll still look at the courses that you took. We will pay attention to both the undergraduate institution, but also if you are an international applicant, to the country that you studied at. And so we'll look at the courses, we'll look at everything. We will not convert a GPA that's on a 10-point scale to a 4-point scale for our evaluation purposes. Next question is about sort of test scores and whether an English language proficiency exam is required if a medium of education was English. And the answer is no.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Yes. So if the medium of education in your undergraduate institution was in English, then no, you do not need to take a TOEFL or one of the other tests to explain your English proficiency. In the application itself, you will be asked if you qualify for this test waiver. So there, you'll just give us some more details on
exactly
why you qualify. So no, it's not required.
Yep. So how important are awards and recognitions in the application? Is community service required? It's nice to see that candidates have done things in the past, either academically or professionally, and received awards or recognition. That said, you don't have to have a single award or special recognition to show that you've had positive progression, you've had very solid academics, positive progression professionally, have been able to have some impact. All of these things can be there without someone else putting a stamp of approval on it and you being able to tell us that you have received an award. So it's great if you can share that, but you shouldn't feel at a particular disadvantage if you don't. Mm-hmm. Community service is not required. Sometimes it is enough to be working your full-time job, and we realize that the professional demands can be intense, and you probably still want to have a life and sleep at night sometimes. I know that's hard. So thinking about activities outside of your professional work, the community service is not required. It is something that many candidates will have and share with us because they're trying to fit it in. They're making an investment in their community. Everyone does things in a different way. Some places where candidates are working, the community service is a piece of the professional work mm-hmm. that they're doing, so it's kind of built in. So lucky that candidate and showcase that. If for some reason, your whatever the case may be, professional demands, the industry that you're in, life and family and all the things that make you very busy at this point, you don't have to hurry up and gather anything at this point to showcase community service just for the committee. I would recommend against that because then that could look like a shallow engagement in some way that you're just putting on there. We don't need for you to put anything on there. So highlight the things that you do have and don't think that you have to add something just because.
Yeah, and we want it to be meaningful, right? So to Amy's point, don't add it to your application or start volunteering now just because you think it will look good. I mean, it's great for your community.
Yeah, if you're really fired up about it and now's the time, then do it authentically. But if it's not, then, sorry to talk to you.
No, it's fine. I don't mind. And in the application itself, in your employment history, you will be asked to tell us the hours of the hours worked during a week, right? So to Amy's point, if we see that you work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, do not worry about trying to fit more in that you're able to, not for our sake. If you do it on your own, great. And if not, again, we look at the entire application, so that's not a piece that was going to make or break it. Does the number of jobs you have on your resume impact how your professional experience level is considered? I think that differs a lot on the candidate, on the resume itself, if it's the number of jobs within the same company and there's a clear progression, or you can tell us why you switched from one position to another in a logical and coherent way, then if anything, it's a positive impact. If you've been in the same position for 1 to 3 years, and your responsibility has increased, tell us about that. Tell us that your leadership and impact has increased, your title has not, and so explain that. If, however, you've held maybe, I don't know, random number 5 positions in 3 years with 5 different firms, be sure to really clearly tell the admissions committee why those switches took place and give us a narrative around that. Help us understand your career path and your progression. So no, the number of jobs, I mean, it may influence sort of how we look at the resume, but it's entirely up to you as a candidate to frame it and to let us understand the purpose behind those switches. How many students have work experience more than 8 years? How is the resume being scanned and weighted by the admissions committee? So I'll go to the second part of the questions about the resume being scanned and weighted by the admissions committee. So again, we all, as Amy mentioned, when we look at your application, we do look closely at your resume, and it's an important part of what you bring to talk, your work experience, your leadership, your impact, your teamwork. A lot of it is there in the resume. Do not solely focus on just that one document, because we'll see a lot of it in the rest of your application. We'll see a lot of it in the letters of recommendation, but every application that we read, we do look very closely at the resume. So it is a professional document that you put forth, and we trust you to tell us some of the more important parts of what you have accomplished there.
And it's a when I read an application, it's a great foundation in a lot of ways of, here are some of the places that this person has been. Here are some of the roles that they've had, some of the things that they're interested in. It's a fun snapshot to see, and then we dive into the details. And so thinking about the first part of that question, how many candidates have more than, or 8, it said 8 or more than 8 years work experience. I don't know the exact number, but I know there are absolutely candidates who have more than 5 years work experience, 7, 8, 9, 10 years work experience. And, when I read that question, I think about a response in a couple different ways. And one, there will be members of this community who have more senior levels work experience. So I don't know if you're asking it and wondering about that. Like, will there be people in this community who, have been at a higher level in business? Yes. Yeah. Will I be the only one who has 8 years work experience? No. There are candidates who are applicants and then who are coming from all different careers, and you will have members of your class who have a similar level of work experience. But again, the majority of people entering into the class will have about 5 years work experience. So while you'll be a few more years of work experience, there will be other members of the community. I don't know if that's the question behind the question, but that's my answer.
Yeah. And to the resume itself, to keep in mind that this is the only document that your interviewer will have when they interview you. So our interviewers will not have seen or have access to the rest of your application. They will only have the resume, right? So when you register for your interview and you submit your resume, if you need to update it at a later date just before the interview, that's fine, as long as you do it up until 1 week before the interview date. But think of the resume as something that your interviewer will see. So they might ask you questions about your current role, your previous roles, about career switches or transitions from one position to another, anything that you put in the personal section. So again, just same as with many other things, it's a professional document, so just be mindful of what's in it and pay close attention to the details. Not to put too much weight on it, but just keep in mind that that's the only document that your interviewer will see. So try to put your best foot forward there and make sure that it's actually as closely representative of the strength of your candidacy as you can get it to be.
And another question on the resume, I just do lightning round. Should I include any undergraduate internship experience or only full-time professional experience? Just general guideline, full-time professional work experience.
Okay, we have about 5 more minutes left, so we'll take 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll start winding down, I think. So to the letters of reference, can the recommendation letter be submitted after the round deadline has passed?
It's not a great look, so you want to submit everything by the deadline. It's definitely a challenge to corral your recommender. They're busy. Hopefully the common letter of recommendation will be helpful with that. You have to plan ahead. You have to guide them to the deadline. If something comes up and they need a minute to submit it, or it's very much the end of day by deadline, like we are humans on the other side of this process, and we would be able to figure that out, but just think about focusing on trying to get everything in by the deadline and encouraging your recommenders, moving them along in a thoughtful way to do the same. So I say good luck with that. I know it's challenging.
Okay. Is it possible to self-schedule an online interview if I'm unable to travel to Dartmouth campus? No. So the applicant-initiated interviews will take place here on campus in Hanover. So if you self-schedule for an interview, we ask that you come here. You don't need to participate in the tour or Q&A session if your schedule absolutely does not allow for it, but the actual interview will need to take place here in Hanover on campus. If it's a committee-initiated interview, and the timing does not permit for it, or you're just unable to travel up here, it can be conducted online. That's not an issue at all. But for the actual applicant-initiated interviews, the answer is that they need to take place here in Hanover. Can you say a couple more?
It looks like we can take 2 more. I think if I'm not able to get an applicant-initiated interview spot, will more become available later? I think we mentioned it before, but the main group of interviewers at Tuck are second-year students that we hire and train, and they are our team of interviewers because many of us are traveling or reading applications at the time you want to come and interview. And so we are working to balance student schedules with interview demand. And so what you see at this moment in time is are the interview spots that are available. We will have interview slots available for all application rounds, but if we were adding interview slots, we would let everybody know, or I don't.
Yeah, some for mid to late October and early November will be added soon. But as Amy mentioned, the interview spots really depend on the second year's availability. So if it shifts and we're able to add some more interview slots, great, we will add that. What also happens is that a candidate might cancel their interview for various reasons. So my suggestion would be that if you don't see a date and time that works for you right now, or if everything is booked out, keep checking the website, right? Keep checking the site. Some spots might open up. And again, we might interview you. We might invite you for a committee-initiated interview at a later date, too.
And there are some dates that just won't be available on the calendar because either students are in exams or for other reasons based on the academic schedule.
Yes.
So running quickly into our final question, how do you encourage candidates who are not able to visit campus to get a sense of the Tuck culture?
Great question. Lots of resources online. Reach out to current students. Reach out to alums if you have an idea of what career path you might take. Take a look if there are Tuck alums that already went through this that might have a similar background to yours. Take a look at our application. It sounds very simple, but our essay questions actually do tell candidates a lot about who we are as a school and what we look for at the candidates. So that's a great indicator of the Tuck culture, not just for us, but for the other programs too. Just looking at our programs as a question and application question. If you sit down and it feels like a chore for you to write the answer for it and it does not speak to you, or you really have a hard time coming up with an example, or just don't understand why this question is being asked because it doesn't feel relevant to you, that might be an indicator. It doesn't have to be the case, but it could tell you something about what the school is looking for and where you as a candidate stand.
And getting to know us a little bit and where you are, taking a look at our events page. You are welcome to register for events in a week or so. I'm headed to Beijing, Shanghai, Seoul, Tokyo, LA. Our executive director is soon headed to Hong Kong, Singapore, Bangalore, Mumbai, Chennai. The list goes on, and that's just a snapshot of it. And at our info sessions, we always have local alumni who are there, so that will give you not only what the admissions team is saying about Tuck, but also what alums are saying, which is, it goes back to Valeria's original point of trying to get to connect with an alum. So at our information sessions, you should be able to do that. But please come to our events and tune in as you go along. Remotely, in person, send us an email. Let us know how we can continue to help and answer your questions.
And you're here with us today, clearly watching us, asking questions, maybe watching at a later date. So clearly you're already on the right path, getting to know the school. So we would love for you to continue to do that. We really appreciate hearing from applicants, seeing applicants just getting to know you as candidates.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for your great questions.
Thank you.